This application will show the processing of site inspection validation to value check the capacitors to make sure the proper value is being inserted in the proper location, as well as to check for varistors or capacitors crimp patterns to confirm that they have been crimped correctly. So as you'll see, the user would initiate the application, make the screen a little bigger, and what you'll see is our first process step is to validate the red capacitors crimp check. So we're going to be looking in this viewing area to confirm that the capacitor has been crimped correctly. And if we present a red capacitor without a crimp, you'll see that the leads are not recognized with the crimp pattern. In addition to that, presenting a component that has a similar crimp pattern but is the wrong size part, it won't recognize that feature as well. So when the correct component is placed in the viewing area, the Klaus finds it, validates that the capacitor crimp is done correctly, and then begins to guide us through the placement process of 2.1 and 2.2, which is the capacitor placement that will take place. So once we've validated the capacitor has the right crimp, then we now insert those capacitors onto the board, and the Klaus will validate that the capacitors have been placed and loaded in the right component location. The next component is a brown capacitor, and it has a particular pattern that we're looking for that will identify the part number for that particular component. And as I've placed other components in the viewing area, only when it finds the 470 microfarad symbol that have been placed here will it validate that the brown capacitor has been built correctly or been checked correctly. And then the next step is to guide us to where the component goes, which is in this placement area here. So it is waiting for me to insert the component. And as I insert the component, the Klaus will then validate the component has been placed correctly. And if I insert the component, and the Klaus will evaluate and notice that the polarity is incorrect here. So the polarity should be facing this direction, and it's actually facing the other direction. So once I've fixed the error in placement in real time, the Klaus now finds that that feature has been found and then moves us on to the green capacitor, of which we'll check its value as well as we did previously. Present the component to the viewing area. Once the component is found in this particular space, it says I got the right capacitor, 35 volt, 470 mic, and then it would guide us through the placement process just as we previously did for the other capacitor. And after I've inserted the first one, and then in this case, the second component placement, validates and confirms that the parts have been crimped properly, the values have been checked, and they are in the proper placement location on the PCB.